I'm Serena Hussain, and I'm a senior research fellow at the Center for Trust, Peace and Social Relations, which I'm sure you've already heard and read a lot about over the course of this 2 days. I'm here to introduce our next speaker. But in doing so, I wanted to share a very recent experience I had related to the experience of Malala's. Malala and I are the daughters of the same land, and I returned from that land less than a week ago. During my time there, I was visiting schools across the country, and one of the things that kept coming up time and again was how misunderstood and misrepresented Pakistan is in the eyes of those children. It's not a country filled with bearded militants waving Kalashnikovs in every school classroom. Far from it. The message that those children wanted me to bring back was that parents, mothers and fathers, value the education of their sons and daughters. And it was only when I was in the most northerly region of Pakistan, nestled in between some of the highest mountain peaks in the world, could I really bear witness to this. I saw tiny little children navigating treacherous mountain roads amongst snow-capped mountains every day to get to school. And this was the norm for them. It's not an exception. I also heard of something else, which really resonated with me and really resonated with the story of Malala while I was there. In Pakistan, Malala and I are neighbors. That's to say that she is from a neighboring province, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and I am from the former princely state of Jammu Kashmir. And that state was split over 65 years ago between Pakistan and India for administration purposes. Like 1.1 million people in this country, I have my origins from Pakistan-administered Kashmir. And while I was there, I heard of a story of a young girl, 14-year-old, like Malala, who really valued education and wanted to become a doctor. Unfortunately, though, her story didn't end like Malala's. And in July this year, on the Indian side of Kashmir, she opened her windows and was shot at by Indian militants. And these are, in fact, state-sanctioned soldiers. This was a purposeful attempt to blind and maim, and it worked. She's been permanently blinded. Her dream of becoming a doctor, of course, is long gone. And it was astonishing that I kept hearing stories like this, of this little girl, Insha Mushtaq. There are hundreds of young children who have been set upon by soldiers in the Valley of Kashmir as part of a deliberate attempt to maim a generation. I really felt that it was befitting to take this stage and raise their cause. If any of you aren't familiar with the current wave of brutality that is taking place against these children in the Valley of Kashmir, I really urge you to go away and find out about it. The fact that Insha Mushtaq's story didn't gain anywhere near the level of international attention as Malala Yousafzai's is very sad, and I'm sure Malala would feel exactly the same way. And on that note, raising the voice of one father, his name is Mushtaq Ahmed, I'd like to introduce another father. I'd like to come to the stage. I'm sure he doesn't need very much of an introduction. Many of you will already know a lot about Malala's story. And here up next to speak about his experience of a father of a daughter who had aspirations, just like the little girl I described, is Ziauddin Yousafzai.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Serena. Hello. Assalamu alaikum and good morning. So my name is Ziauddin Yousafzai. Surname is quite difficult, Yousafzai. And once upon a time, Malala was my daughter, but now I am her father. Thank you for Rising Global Peace Forum. It's a real honor to be here and speak about girls' empowerment, education. I belong to Swat. It's a beautiful valley in the north of Pakistan. And there is a village. Its name is Charbagh. Charbagh means 4 gardens. And they have a patriarchal saying. I'll call it patriarchal saying. And they say that God, if you give me a son, the rest leave it to me. I'll try to make you understand because there is a communication gap of language. Give me a son, and that's enough for me. It's very patriarchal saying. I mean, how much we believe in sons. And when I used to give speeches in the Swat Valley, I used to say to the people, give education to your daughter and then leave it to her. She will make her way on her own. I was born in a village in the north of Pakistan, Shangla, which is a district adjacent to Swat Valley. In a small village, I received my primary education in a shabby building, on a rough mat and rugs. And even in some months, we had no building at all. And I studied and I read under a big maple tree. And those were the beautiful days of my school. In that village, most of the men and the people, they believed in boys' education. Because I was in school, my older brother was in school, and he got his GCSE, which we call metric in Pakistan. But I had 5 sisters in the same home where I grew up. My father believed that I should get education. My father and my mother both were very much interested in my older brother education. But they never thought about their 5 daughters in the same house. None of my sisters went to school. And it's very interesting that my mother was a great mother. May her soul rest in peace. She was so interested in my studies, although she had never been to school, but she knew the importance of education for me. And she used to tell me the stories of doctors and engineers and bankers in the neighborhood that, look, that man who was very poor and he received education and now he's a doctor. And she used to inspire me with these beautiful stories of the successful men who got some place and recognition in the society because of education. But my mother, she never thought that why she herself is not educated. She never thought that why the 5 daughters which she had in the same house are not being sent to school. Because it was a social norm, accepted and appreciated by the society. And I usually tell people that this patriarchal thinking, these restrictions and these social taboos on women and girls, not encouraging them to receive education, not empowering them to be themselves, and not giving them the freedom to be the part of the social life and political life, I usually call it men's sickness. It is social sickness. Not believing in girls, not believing in their potentials, not honoring them to be free. It is men's social sickness. And the only panacea to this sickness is quality education. So when I grew up in that house, in that home, and I was very much interested to learn. My father was a clerk in the mosque, and he used to tell me the great stories about India because he had been in India. He had seen leaders like Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Quaid-e-Azam, Gandhi Ji, Nehru, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, Bacha Khan. He inspired me with those stories as well. But what was missing in that village was the girls' education. And I was thinking, so my education, when I got education, it changed me. It changed my mindset. And I was thinking that if I am a father one day, I will educate my daughter. And believe me that when Malala was born in 1997, early in the morning, and when I went, and for the first time, I saw her, and I looked into her sparkling, shining eyes. That moment, I felt myself as the most blessed human being on earth, being a father of a daughter. And then I named her Malala. Malala is a legendary name. Malala of Maivan was a hero. She is a legendary hero in Afghanistan. In Second Anglo-Afghan War, this girl, Malala of Maivan, while the Afghan and Pashtun fighters were fleeing from the battlefield and the British soldiers were after them. So this girl, when she felt that the fighters are leaving the battlefield, she rose to a mound, to a small hill, and she raised her voice. Kapamaiwan ki shahid nashwi, grana lalia benangele de sat ina. It's our own language. So she raised her voice and said to the fighters that, oh my love, oh my dear, if you don't fight for your freedom today and you don't sacrifice for your freedom today, somebody may be keeping you for a shameful day. And these words were so powerful that the fighters came back, they fought. Malala herself held the flag of Afghanistan and she gave her life. But her words tuned with history. And Malala of Maivan is like Joan of Arc for Pashtuns and for that region. I named her after Malala of Maivan because that she will not be fighting with a sword. Because I believed in the words she raised in that battlefield. I believed in that she will have her own identity. Because in most patriarchal societies, our women are known by the men. Even I usually tell the story that when they take a woman to a patient, a female patient to the doctor, and the doctor asks, who is she? The man escort says, just write Mr. Akram's wife, Mr. So-and-so's mother, Mr. So-and-so's sister. What the hell is this? This lady has her own name. So if this society is so much private about women's identity, really, it needs a hard work to encourage men to be supportive to the girls and to encourage women to stand up for their rights. And few weeks after Malala was born, one of my cousins brought our family tree. And he just gave me this family tree, and when I looked at the tree, it was tracing back to 300 years of our generation. Fathers, forefathers, great-fathers, sons, grandsons. And when I looked at it, they were all men. And I had my daughter that time, and I just picked up the pen and wrote Malala. And my cousin was looking towards me that what crazy man he is. He is entering a female name, a girl name in the family tree. But I meant it. I just smiled. And believe me, that very cousin of mine, when Malala was 13, 14 years old, and she became that powerful voice for girls' education in Pakistan, he wrote a long poem to praise her. I was so happy. It was a change that I saw with my own eyes. So, we had a great life in Swat Valley, and Malala was in the same school which I started in 1994. She was my daughter, she was my student as well. And then you know the story of Taliban, that in 2007 and 2008, Taliban introduced themselves to the Swat Valley. And that paradise on earth was turned into a hell, which was a tourism place for the people from all around the world, was turned into a hub of terrorism. And Taliban, usually I define Taliban that the people who want to destroy everything that is old, that is about civilization, that is about art, that is about music, that is about culture. The people who destroy everything that is old, why they don't have anything new to give. That is the whole Talibanization. And their whole story revolves around girls and about women. If you enslave girls, just confine them to the four walls, implement on them all restrictions, and snatch from them all basic human rights, that is perfect Talibanization. And what they did, they destroyed more than 400 schools. And in January 2008, they declared and they announced on their FM radio that no girl will go to school. That was the time. And Malala explains it very well, that there is a time in your life when you have to be silent or to speak. And she spoke. She wrote a BBC diary, and she explained to the world, and she told the story of Swat, what was happening in the Swat Valley. Because many people in the south and in the east of the country were thinking of Taliban as reformers. They didn't know what they were doing, what the hell they were doing with the people of Swat. And she shared the story of Taliban and what was happening in the valley, not only with the people in Pakistan, but all over the world. And then she volunteered herself for 2 documentaries by New York Times. And she spoke to every forum she could. And one day while in 2011, she got the first Malala Yousafzai National Youth Peace Prize from the Prime Minister of Pakistan. And she told me this story when we reached home back. And we were going from Islamabad to Swat. On the way back, there is a beautiful mountain range. It's called Malala Fund. And in that range, in those mountains, on the roadside, there was a guy, he was selling oranges. And with that shopkeeper, there was a small girl who had like a nail, and she was writing on a small piece of paper, trying to write something. And we just parked our car for a while, and we bought some oranges. And Malala asked that small girl, "Are you in school?" And she said, "No." So she asked her again that, "What are you doing here?" And she said that, "I'm helping my father in selling oranges." And it was so sad that that small girl who loved education so much that she was pretending to write with a nail on a piece of paper. And that struck Malala's heart and mind. And she decided that when she will be back to Swat Valley, she will establish an organization for girls' education. Because girls were out of school, not only because of Talibanization, but there were many other reasons that girls were not in school, because of child trafficking, because of domestic child labor, because of social taboos, because of poverty. And she started her campaign for education, not only raising her voice for the girls' education in every platform in Pakistan, but also she started to motivate and to mobilize girls in her school. And that activism was disliked, rather hated by Taliban. And they tried to kill her. And in 2012, she was attacked. And she narrowly escaped. That's very tragic story. I don't want to revive my trauma. But, I mean, they tried to kill her. And I usually tell people that Taliban, I mean, they were using suicide bombing, and they were suicide attacks. They were killing people in target killings. They were bombing schools. But they were so afraid of that small girl voice that they thought that this voice is more powerful than our bombs and our killings and everything. But we say that man proposes, God disposes. She was destined for the mission she took later on when she recovered from that tragedy, and we had to come from Pakistan to UK for her further treatment. And she had many, many surgeries. After got restored physically and mentally, she started the Malala Fund. And Malala Fund is an organization which is working for girls' education, for women empowerment all over the world. During the last 4 years, we have been to Jordan, we have been to Lebanon, we have been to Kenya, we have been to Rwanda. And especially our focus is on refugees, Syrian refugees. We just heard the inspiring story of Jo Cox. She is a great inspiration, really. Live like Jo, love like Jo, really. So, Syrian refugees, I mean, it's a great human tragedy. And I remember that when in 2014, February, we went to Zaatari camp. It is the biggest camp for Syrian refugees in Jordan. And we met a girl, her name is Mazoon. And Mazoon, she was 18, now she's 18 years old. When we met her, this girl, she was going from tent to tent and from camp to camp to motivate girls to go to school. And when I met her many times later too, I asked her that, Mazoon, what inspired you that the other girls and you yourself in school and you wanted other girls to be in school? And she told me that I told to myself that girls should be in school. So Malala Fund has 3 main objectives. Number 1 is advocacy. Number 2 is investment on ground. And number 3 is amplifying the voices of other girls and education campaigners. We are working hard for the 12 years of education for girls and boys, because in SDGs and Sustainable Development Goals, the UN and global organization were thinking of only 9 years of basic education for every child in the world. But due to Malala Fund's campaign, we were successful to include 12 years of compulsory education, free and quality education for every child in the world. And that's very much important, because primary education, of course, we can't have secondary education without primary education, but secondary education gives wings to the girls, and then they are able to be leaders in their communities. So that's very much important. We are also amplifying the voices of other education campaigners, like I mentioned that one girl, and we have also met amazing girls in Kenya, in Rwanda, and in other parts of the world, in Pakistan. And Malala invited 5 education campaigners to her Nobel Peace Prize as well. So this is all we do, and we are having a very state-of-art girls' school project in the north of Pakistan, in the village where I was born, and it's a school in Shangla. It will be a high school for girls, and their district has 0.7 million population. And believe me, there is no good school, no school that can give a quality education to the girls in that district. So that will be the first ever state-of-art school established by the Malala Fund, and it will start in 2018. So this is all we do. And I must tell that education, in these countries we see that many boys and girls, they are so tired of homework and they don't want to get up in the morning to go to school. I know about my sons as well. They are very lazy. They take it for granted. It should be taken for granted, but they don't value it, to be honest. But I have been in many, these countries like Kenya and Syrian refugees, and we had been to Bekawel in Lebanon. We have established 2 high schools from the Malala Fund there as well for the Syrian refugees. And when I see these girls all around the world, especially in the areas where there is conflict, believe me, it's so heartwarming, it's so touching that you will say that I should leave everything and I should just wholly solely give my life to girls' education. In Kenya, we went to a school, and there I noticed that all girls had shaven their hair. And I asked the principal that, why these girls, they don't grow hair on their head? And the principal told me that actually, we asked these girls that, what kind of hair you want to have? And all girls said that, okay, we don't want to grow long hair because it takes a lot of time to comb them, and we don't have much time. We want to study more and more. And I knew later on that that was the first generation in high school. We met a girl in Dadaab camp. Her name was Rahma Hussain. And Rahma Hussain's story is so inspiring that Rahma and her family went back to Somalia, and there she knew that there is no school. And Rahma then made an ID on Facebook, and she connected herself with someone in Canada, and then she asked for money, and through the help of that Canadian guy, she managed back to come to the Dadaab camp back. And she She traveled for 8 days on bus, and she came back to the camp because she was missing her school. So such a passion these girls have to get education. And education for girls is just not arithmetics, computer science. For them, it is anticipation. For them, it is everything. You might have heard, just to wind up, Archimedes, the Greek mathematician, once said that if you give me a lever, I can move the world. It was theoretical and ideological, something imaginary. I say that give the girls the lever of education, and they will move the world. And it is not theoretical and imaginary, it is practical and real. Thank you very much.